Well, good morning, everybody. I've got straight up 10 o'clock Central. That means it's really early on the West Coast, and y'all are starting to think about lunch on the East Coast. So, welcome. We are live with Angie's podcast, The Long Term, which means it's the last Tuesday of the month, which is crazy to think that we're already basically at the end of June. And summer is in full swing with the triple digit heat that we're collecting here, and the fact that the AC yesterday decided it didn't want to keep up all that well in the office. So I'll have you all know that it's working just fine this morning. So nobody's going to get hot and sweaty and want to leave the office building. I am super, super excited about this month's podcast. And if any of you have seen the emails that went out about, hey, don't forget to join the podcast, I caught a typo. And so the typo on my podcast said, what does Brian have to do with it? And so I told my gal that pushes out the content, and I said, it's not Brian, it's Brain. And so she fixed the subject line, and then it still kept going out in the body that said, what's Brian have to do with it? So we'll just say Brian and Brain are the same thing. But to join my podcast this month, I'm really excited. I don't know if I know none of you have actually had or listened to on my podcast the Scott Brewer, but he is in our Colorado office, and he has been a part of our team for quite a long time, always on the life insurance side. But he's probably, when I said, hey, Scott, I want you to join me on my podcast, I think I can turn this into something. He was like, what? What are you talking about, Angie? But he attended an underwriting symposium, and there was a speaker. And when he came back, he was really pretty jazzed about it. And the gentleman that actually spoke at this, his name was Mark Milstein. He's a PhD, and he specializes in leading science research with brain health and so much stuff. And he's basically got a PhD in biological chemistry and a bachelor's of science in molecular and cellular and development biology. So really uber smart. But Scott, I wanted to welcome you to the podcast community and kind of just let you say hi to the crowd and tell me a little bit about kind of what you saw there. And then we're going to dig into some of the content that the speaker presented to you.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well out there. Yeah, we had a meeting, and Mr. Milstein was nice enough to come and meet with us. And the kid is brilliant. He's been on TV, and his book, The Age-Proof Brain, is a really good read if you guys have time. But basically, he was talking to us. There are certain things you can do to help prevent or reduce cognitive decline as you get older. There's a variety of things you could do as far as diet, just mindfulness, a lot of steps you can do. And it's not all genetic that you're going to have cognitive decline. There's things you can do to help prevent or minimize that risk.
You know, Scott, I thought it was really interesting when you came back from that underwriting meeting and you had heard him talk, and you and I were just kind of having a conversation about it. And I was like, hey, shoot me over some bullet points, about some tidbits that he left with you. And one of these very first bullet points that you sent me was really kind of jaw-dropping for me. It basically was the brain already starts shrinking at around the age of 40, which seems really young, right? I mean, so perpetual learning is certainly a thing that we should all be aware of. But 40, man, our age starts to shrink, or our brain starts to shrink already at 40. That's kind of crazy if you start thinking about how much life you have to live. We're already reducing cognitive abilities at age 40.
Right. It's definitely something that happens. There's no way around it. But there's things you can do to generate your brain's activity, which will help you live a better cognitive life as you get older.
And, I used to say for extended care planning, and we're talking about long-term care insurance, I used to tell people, take a look at your own personal family, reflect back, right? Reflect through the generations. How about your parents? How about your grandparents? But what's interesting is he actually goes in here and he says because they were kind enough to share his PowerPoint, that cognitive decline is linked more to a person's health than it is necessarily their genetic profile, which that was eye-opening for me, because I used to tell people, we think dementia and Alzheimer's is kind of, a genetic disposition, but he's saying if you do some things, you can actually slow down that cognitive decline, not really necessarily prevent Alzheimer's, I don't think he said, but certainly there's things. I mean, if you think about, no different than we exercise because the heart is a muscle, right? You should use your brain because it's a living, breathing organ that controls everything inside your body. So I found that really interesting, and I'm probably going to change the way I talk to folks when they're wanting it's extended care planning, and not maybe putting so much of an emphasis on, hey, did somebody in your family have Alzheimer's or dementia or cognitive decline? Because it's really a matter of how healthy are you? I mean, how do you take care of yourself?
Right. I mean, they did studies and they had people follow, basically all of these steps he discussed. And they found that the people that rigorously followed this routine of sleep, diet, learning something new, if they just did stuff like that rigorously, they found that it reduced the risk by quite a bit. I think it was up to 65%
Yeah, that's
in people
crazy.
that follow the diet and all of his pointers that we're going to go over. So,
And
I mean, there's a lot. Go
oh,
ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was going to say the brain is such a complex
Yeah.
organ that we have. We are just barely starting to understand it. It's almost like the ocean. We only understand
Yeah.
like 1 to 2% of the ocean,
Yeah.
and the brain is like that in the whole body. Even diabetes can affect your brain health, or inflammation throughout your body can affect it as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you were to put everything in context that the doctor had talked about, I mean, it's all the things you should be doing, right? Your body is a machine, right? We often say a body in motion stays in motion. All those types of things, they're not cliche. I mean, there's actual scientific studies that talk about that. But how important did he say sleep was? Because, so many of us, that's the one thing that between our diet and our sleep, those are the things that we really probably don't pay as much attention to as we should, right? Because you've got activities, you stay up a little later than you probably should, which shortens your sleep cycle. Then you get up and you're rushed and you don't maybe necessarily make the right food choices. How important was sleep?
Sleep was probably the most important thing I gathered that he mentioned. There was actually somebody that started this. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Pete Sampras. He was a tennis player, and when he would travel to keep his sleep cycle set, he would even take black tape and put over all of the lights in his room so he could be in total darkness.
Wow.
And they found out later that's actually a good thing. But good habits of going to bed at the same time every night, waking up at the same time every day, and also, I know that's not completely possible for everybody, but the best you can do to do that, and then a half an hour if you get up, if you go outside and expose yourself to natural light for just 10 minutes a day, that can help start your brain in a good cycle to go throughout the day, and it in the long run helps your cognitive abilities.
Well, I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? So a lot of these folks try to do things like they say, I just can't shut my mind off. I just can't turn it off. So then we start taking melatonin, or we start taking these sleep aids and things of that nature. And I think I read inside the PowerPoint where he said that really doesn't help much. And actually, it can cause the brain to stop naturally producing it later in life, which would become a problem, right? When it takes more to function as we get older. If your brain is not producing its own natural melatonin, then we're not doing any help or any service to our brains in order to create that longevity. What did he
Correct.
say about, so many people say, oh, you got to play these brain games. You got to do these brain. I've never been one to really pick those up. I find them frustrating more than anything. I mean, I like word searches, but I didn't notice he mentioned that. It was more like, what is that, Sudoku or that kind of stuff. But did he say anything like that's really important?
I mean, any kind of learning is important. One of the key factors they had and in that study group was just try and learn something new every day. Even if it's something simple or listening to some new music.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, you just want to keep your mind engaged, and
Mm-hmm.
it just keeps the brain working, and it creates good good
Mm-hmm.
vibes going on in the brain, I guess is my kind of term for it. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's true, right? So I think about when you see what I'll deem to be active seniors and you see them out bicycling, and they're out in open air and or out walking, or they're taking dance lessons, or they're going to concerts or plays, or all of that stuff is so important because your brain is engaging in all of these different senses, and it's picking up all the things that it needs, because when it goes to sleep, when your body goes to sleep, the brain shrinks, according to what I read that he put out, right? Your brain shrinks and it's got to dump stuff. It's got to dump stuff so that it can actually relax and get good rest, so that when you wake up the next day, you're energized. And that's why it's important to get that natural sunlight. I feel horrible for the people that live in the areas where like it's dark for days and weeks upon end. I don't know how they do that. But one of the things that as I think about the aging process in witnessing it in my own family, is the mobility and the socialization, right? So when all of a sudden your body starts to hurt, it's one of those things where you don't necessarily want to get up because it hurts to get up and move. But yet if you don't get up and move, the body just doesn't want to move anymore. And that's not a good thing. But socialization, they said, was really important. And you think about, like, one of the number one diagnoses for folks as they get into that aging, and I'll even kind of move over to like an elderly situation, is depression. And that absolutely comes from feeling like they're confined even to just their own home. And so getting out and having external stimulation, whether it be coffee with the girlfriends or a card game with the guys, or whatever that looks like, a dinner date, things of that nature. But socialization is really important, and it does a whole host of things, right? Because now you're talking, you're engaging, you're learning, you're taking on different senses. And that's really important too, is to keep the brain healthy, is all of that socialization that we have a tendency, I'm sure, as you get older and your friends start to pass away, I mean, that does get a little sad. And but still keeping yourself out there and engaged as much as possible adds to longevity. I can't help but think there's a website actually out there called livingto100.com. And they mentioned that in some of this information, if you really want a true accurate analysis. And some people are like, no, I really don't care to know what my longevity is. And then there's others that are like, yeah, let's see how long that is. I'm kind of curious, how much time do I have? But it's really more of a concern of how much quality time do you have? And I was watching a reel, I think, the other day, and somebody said, "Are your parents still alive?" And the gentleman said, "Yeah, they are." And he goes, "Where are they? Where they living?" And the guy said, "Oh, they live in Washington, D.C." He goes, "How many times a year do how many times a month do you see them?" And he said, "Oh, a couple of times." And then he said, "Their life expectancy says they're only going to live 5 more years. That means you'll see your parents, if it's twice a year, you'll see them 10 more times." When you put things in context like that, socialization becomes a really big deal, because your window gets really short at that point. Just for nugget of information, I went into that life expectancy calendar or calculator this morning and ran mine. So I'm nearest age 54. And it said that and you go through your health, your family's health, the quality of the air, how active are you, what are your eating habits. It goes through that. It doesn't take a really long time, but it basically said my life expectancy is to 91 years of age, and I'm going to live 37 more years, which I find this kind of stuff just absolutely fascinating. I'm also going through some Social Security classes, and life expectancy is a really big thing for that as well, right? Planning on that Social Security income and how to optimize that. And so you think about longevity, and so much of that is we think with extended care planning, but what's your quality of that longevity, and what are the things that you can do to make sure that you're still engaged with that. He mentioned a lot of things, Scott, like taking a multivitamin every day, getting good sleep, good consistent sleep, socialization. He mentioned a mind diet as well.
Yeah, it was basically he gave a weekly diet, and it basically included green leafy vegetables every day, other vegetables at least once per day, maybe some carrots or stuff that you typically don't like to eat as a kid, but it's definitely worth it. I mean, the way you just put that into perspective, you see your parents 2 times a year.
Yeah.
That really makes you want to eat the stuff that you might not want to eat. So yeah, a good mix of nuts every day, berries at least twice per week, beans every other day, whole grains 3 times per day, fish at least once per week. I found that interesting. Poultry twice per week. Mix some olive oil in. And one thing that'll make everybody happy, he recommended one glass of red wine every day is good for you. And I know that is good for your heart as well.
Boy,
My
I need
parents.
I need to practice that a little bit more routinely, I think, if that's if that's allowable, right?
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
kind of like the dessert of the mind diet there. But
Wow.
I mean, if people followed that diet rigorously, that reduced their risk of cognitive decline by 35 to 53% from what their studies showed.
I have no scientific data behind this, right? But I used to say, in talking to friends and stuff in the passing, I was like, just think about all the preservatives. There was a physician here in my hometown that took a fast food restaurant hamburger and opened up the package and just kept it. Just kept it. Didn't eat it. Just it was basically a paperweight. But the reality is that thing never decayed because of all the preservatives in it. And I'm thinking, think about how busy we make our lives. And I sincerely mean that. We make our lives that busy that we feed our families through drive-throughs, right? And it says on here, diet matters so much, and ultra processed foods are not good for you. So we all know we're supposed to eat right. We all know you're not supposed to have McDonald's or, Wendy's or Burger King every lunch. I mean, we know that. I mean, we're intelligent people. However, we make ourselves so busy that keeping up with our diets, again, back to that diet and sleep, those are the 2 things that we give up on, when really the long term, the long game in this, that doesn't bode well for it. Shoving all of that ultra processed food in your body is not good for your body. It's not good for your brain. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your organs. And he talks a lot about the stress, right? I used to think, as complicated as we try to make our lives, I used to think when we were interviewing folks, I said, you got to be able to multitask. You got to be able to do a lot of things. You can sit at your desk and be contacted 5 different ways by 5 different people, and you got to be able to start and stop. And I thought to myself, in some really high stressful where you got all these projects going and you got deadlines and you're really crunching and you're not sure you're going to meet all those deadlines and you're putting in all the extra hours. And I thought to myself, this is crazy. just because you can multitask doesn't make you a master of all. It just means you're ultra distracted in everything. And he talks
Right.
about this is if you're multitasking and lose track of your task you're working on, that's not good for your brain. And he gave an example, didn't he, about when you go to the fridge or something?
Yeah, basically, if you're sitting there and you're watching sports or something and you get up to go to the fridge and you just stand there looking in the refrigerator, that's not good for your brain because it's just dumping what you were thinking about when you walked in that room. Um, I've been doing it all the time lately. I'm selling a house, and I can't tell you how many times over the last weekend that I did that. I walk in the garage and be like, what am I here for? And
Mm-hmm.
I immediately thought of this whole presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes to something, I know you mentioned stress too, and he did mention a manageable level of stress is actually good for your brain.
Mm-hmm.
But it's where you're overwhelming stress, that's where stress is not good for your brain
Mm-hmm.
and your body. But if you have
Mm-hmm.
a manageable amount that you can get through every day, it gets your brain going, that's good for you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I mean, we all know the difference between being at work and being bored out of your mind. Then things tick up and you've got manageable stress, and then all of a sudden it's overwhelming. And if you go for long, long periods of time with overwhelming stress, if you pay attention to your body signals, it is absolutely telling you, shut it down. I mean, that's when all of a sudden you get the insomnia. You're not functioning well. You become basically a walking zombie. Your brain is just it's taxing itself. And being able to recognize those things and kind of get that back down to a manageable level of stress is really, really important for the long game, right? I mean, I don't think anybody, I've heard numerous people say, look, I don't want to live to 100. I don't even want to live to, 90 is good with me. And you think about when you're running life insurance illustrations, right? You usually want that midpoint to at least get out, guarantee side to get to 90. The midpoint's going to get even farther, and then the non-guaranteed will carry you out for a really long time. People don't,
mhm.
people will tell you, look, I don't want to live forever, but the amount of time I am living, I want it to be quality. And so I think what Mr. Milstein was saying was, here's some things you have to do because you've got computers in your body, two really big computers, right? Your brain and your heart. Those two have got to function. And obviously, if the brain's not there, it's not going to send the signals to all the other organs it's supposed to. But how do you create? And it's not because everybody wants to be eternal. We all know life is fatal at some point, but it's a matter of how can you have that quality of life while you're living, especially when we all start thinking about, I mean, I probably a little too deep thinking about this, but I think, most Americans financially just don't have enough money to live on, let alone retire on. And so that's creating stress for them. When people do retire, it's always about a financial decision, right? And how many times have you
Right.
known somebody that they've retired and their health isn't good? Well, it's because we didn't do what we needed to do, kind of what I'll deem as your working years, to make sure that you were in it for the long term. All puns intended there. But how do you do that? And there's the scientific data in the book, The Age Proof Brain, talks about that. How do you make sure that your body is set up to give you that quality of life and allow you to function throughout that? And I think a lot of the things that they talk about is it's common sense, but it's not real common when you're kind of going through what I call the grind of life, and you're you know getting up, going to work, doing your thing. You got to make sure you put some of those in step. You can't just sit numbingly for hours scrolling through TikTok or Facebook Reels when you should actually just pick up a book and engage yourself with. I mean, we're kind of at this turning point, I think, with a lot of folks, where you have to consciously make the decision to put yourself in the right place, knowing that you're looking ahead, not about right now. Save the mindless scrolling for sitting in an airport, or, killing a quick 5-10 minutes while you're waiting at a doctor's office. But otherwise, use your brain to reset itself, to learn something, to listen to music or things that are better for you, which I'm really excited. I tell you what, Scott, we'll probably have you back on at some point after you've read his book, and let me know all the wonderful little secrets that you have found out in that book, of
Okay.
all things that we're doing or not doing that we should be, that's going to create that. So when you're, I guess, to kind of wrap that all back up, if you start thinking about extended care planning for your clients, whether it's on an annuity, whether it's on a life insurance, whether it's a traditional product, whether it's they're going to self-fund it, whatever that looks like, I think even when you're going through Social Security planning, which I'm learning in this course that I'm taking, that it really is a longevity game, right? Whatever that is, whatever that longevity looks like, it's longer for others, it's shorter for others, but it's the quality in that longevity game. And what are you doing to maximize that for yourself and your family? Scott, do you have anything else you would want to say about kind of what you picked up or what you learned? Or
You really summarized that in some really good points there. I guess what I'm gathering is if you put in the work, your quality of life has a much better chance as you get older, just to make it a more enjoyable experience for you.
absolutely.
There's going to be, there's always going to be hurdles to get through, but if you can just get in a routine of just doing these things, I mean, it's almost impossible to follow this all the time, but just incorporate a few things into your daily life. A half an hour of exercise every day would be great for you. Just even going for a walk in nature is really good, to keep your mind fresh. And the one thing he said, one of the best exercises you can do is going out and dancing. And that's combining your hearing exposure. Hearing loss, it actually does contribute to your cognitive ability, which goes into the whole socialization part that you spoke earlier. So there's just so many things, and I'm trying to incorporate as many as I can in my life. You, me, everybody on this call knows somebody or has someone in their family that has had cognitive decline, and it's not pretty. It never is. And I have some aunts that have been in facilities, and there's a lot of research going on out there right now. I know the VA's doing a study on deep brain stimulation to help with Parkinson's disease.
Hey, didn't you just recently hear something about Department of Defense is doing some research?
Yeah, well, that's through the VA.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, they were looking at Parkinson's and even lowering blood sugar. There could be a way that they could stimulate the brain to make your body create that at a more appropriate level. So we're just starting to understand the brain, but it sure seems to me the brain is linked to everything as far as getting old, but you got to put the work in to make your brain right so it can work right for you.
That's all good stuff. All good stuff, especially when if you're in it for the long term, if you're in it for the long game and the longevity of it, you might as well optimize your chances.
Yep.
Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough. This was actually fun. I enjoy talking about stuff like this. Hopefully, the listeners out there enjoyed it as well. And obviously, the month of July, the last Tuesday, we'll catch you on the next podcast. And all of you have a wonderful day today. Thank you. Thanks for joining, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.